You're giving Antonio Brown too much credit, and you're not giving the Oakland Raiders and professional football players enough credit. Here's the deciphering factor that people need to understand about NFL football players. We are naturally dismissive of things that don't have anything to do with being on the field because it's our livelihood. This is how these guys are feeding their families. They've dreamed to be NFL football players for their entire life if you make it to that level. So to give Antonio Brown credit, to say because of Antonio Brown, these grown men in this locker room banded together in order to beat Denver, is a misnomer. They banded together because, number one, that's your job. Number one, you take pride in your job. And if you're thinking that AB is going to create momentum for you the rest of the season, Oakland's going to have a bad football team.
I'm not on board with that. You know, sports are so different than so many different parts of culture that one of the great motivators is the opportunity to prove people wrong and to prove people that, you know, AB manipulated them as teammates. He used them as teammates. You don't think that Derek Carr was sitting there yesterday going, I'm going to prove to everybody, prove to myself, to my teammates that I don't need AB, or Tyrell Williams. Again, I'm not saying that it forced them as a team. Like all 53 of us, we don't need AB. But individually, as a quarterback, yeah, if you don't want to play with me, fine, then I don't need you. Or Tyrell Williams, if you don't want to be the guy opposite me, then I'll go be the #1 receiver in Oakland. I promise you that was part of their motivation.
Derek Carr was sensational last night. Mike T, final word.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a resiliency that it's us against the world. A couple of years ago, our first game at the Miami was canceled for a hurricane. We went cross country. We had a bye week. It brought everybody together, the team, the organization. We beat the Chargers after we practiced in Oxnard, really with no equipment. So it is a little bit of a rallying cry. It's not necessarily sustainable. They still have to go out and do the work. But initially, it is a little bit of us against the world.
To me, and you've all been on the inside and I've not, that just sounds unbelievable to me, that the entire team is on a plane and they're waiting on the tarmac for one guy. I don't care how good a player he is. I don't care if it's Aaron Rodgers. That doesn't sound normal to me. Does it sound normal to you?
Not at all. But you do what your culture allows. And this is the thing I think people are missing about AB going to the Patriots. And I say this all the time. You and I have had this conversation. G, I've talked to Paul 1,000 times about this. If you don't fit in the culture, eventually it will force you out, right? The Steelers eventually forced AB out. People can talk about, oh, it was AB and he created this. Well, you don't fit in this culture anymore. The New England Patriots, beyond anyone, if you don't fit in that culture, it won't work out. So we can talk about AB's antics and missing planes and not showing up to meetings on time. The only team, and I liken this a lot. You know I love basketball. I liken this a lot to when the Chicago Bulls signed Dennis Rodman.
Yeah.
And the only reason they could is because Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan were on that team. The only reason they felt like this can work is because you had two of the greatest to ever do it on that team. The Patriots are the only team in that position to do this with Antonio Brown.
And that's why this is such a good signing for the New England Patriots. It's unbelievably opportunistic. They have a player that has more to lose than they do. And the lens of this is going to be judged by the 31 teams in March of 20 in free agency. Antonio Brown needs to recoup a lot of that money that he just lost. He needs to be on his best behavior much more than New England does. It really reminds me of when we got Braylon Edwards, Santonio Holmes at the New York Jets on short-term deals. It was a great opportunity, and I expect Antonio Brown to be on his best behavior with them.
We've got to listen to Tom Brady talk, right? Tom Brady in his comments said, we've got to communicate. Does it sound like AB's great at communication? No. The entire offense, it's not about you, AB. It's always been about you. And then what's in the best interest of our team? That's coming from the guy who's running the football team in Tom Brady. So AB's got to do that. I want to share a story. Rob Ninkovich last week on NFL Live talked about how he was fined in playing in New England for being 2 pounds overweight. And they said, listen, I'll go in the sauna and lose it right now. And they said, no, this is your fine. AB will get fined in New England, and it's not a negotiation. That's got to be a big talking point.
Let me get a final word here from Mr. Feinbaum.
Yeah, I think a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing. I side with Mike. I think that's the last word because this guy knows what he's doing. He's watching it right now. He's laughing. He's having the time of his life. He is going to conform because he has to conform.
That's right. Why does he have to conform in New England if
because
he
he's out of options?
He just set $20 million on fire in Oakland. Why is he?
Well, he's gotten more than that in return from this conversation and a million other conversations. I mean, he's playing for the premier franchise in modern NFL history, maybe of all time, and he knows that if he screws up, he's gone, and he doesn't want to be watching us unemployed. He wants to be working.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports, highlights, and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.